Hi everyone, it's Dr. Conlon. Today we are going to talk about child nutrition and cover some special topics from chapters 11 and 12. This is the lecture for Monday, April 13th. It would be lecture 16. We're now in week 14. I hope that you all enjoyed your Easter break and are feeling a bit more refreshed. And I, of course, hope that you're all doing well and staying safe and healthy. So for today's outline, we'll have our lecture. I just wanted to remind you that on Moodle, a discussion forum is posted. It's a video and a few reflection questions on childhood obesity. I saw that some of you have already answered or responded to. And for those of you who have not, then please do so by Wednesday, and then we'll just talk about a few announcements. So this is what's posted to Moodle. This video, you'll find it on the website, and here are the discussion questions I just wanted to show you as a reminder. The video was a good segue into today's lecture because we're going to discuss childhood obesity and cover objectives from chapter 12 and a little bit from chapter 11 towards the end of the lecture. So first, objectives are to list 2 Healthy People 2020 objectives specifically related to school-aged children. If you remember, we did this. We've covered Healthy People 2020 throughout the stages of the life cycle from preconception to toddlers so far. So Healthy People has objectives for every stage of the life cycle, which is really great because it's such an important public health program for our nation. And it goes to show how we need to consider every stage of the life cycle and also how important and powerful in human health and development nutrition is at every stage of the life cycle. We have Healthy People to lend evidence that substantiates the importance of nutrition to us. So adequate nutrition continues to play an important role during the school age years. School age years are about ages 5 to 12. Nutrition helps to prevent immediate health problems. We know it promotes a healthy lifestyle and it reduces risk of developing a chronic condition. We know that intervening in young children is important for preventing the tracking of certain behaviors, less healthful behaviors into adulthood. So intervening in childhood is really important, especially because data on U.S. children show that children under 18 are nearly 25% of the population, but they have noticeable health disparities. Also important to know, lack of health insurance is an issue. About 3.3 million children have no health insurance, which means that they probably have difficulty accessing health care, including primary care, where they receive their wellness visits. And so there are a number of objectives in Healthy People 2020 specific to school-aged children, including their well-being, and you can see table 12.1 in your textbook. I just want to show you that recent NHANES data, this is from 2015 to 16, shows substantial differences in obesity rates among children of different races and ethnicity. So here you can see total obesity divided into the different categories: non-Hispanic white, non-Hispanic black, non-Hispanic Asian, and then Hispanic. And then here you see boys and girls. For Latino children, boys have the highest rate of obesity at 28%. For black children, for girls, for girls, this is black children at 25.1% compared to the 22% total. And then among non-Hispanic white children, the obesity rate's 14.1%, a little bit higher for boys and a little bit lower for girls. And then for Asians, we see the lowest prevalence of childhood obesity, or around 11% total, 11.7% for boys and 10.1% for girls. So that's to give you an idea of the prevalence, which shows you a snapshot of a proportion of who has obesity. So here are Healthy People 2020 objectives. I'm not going to read through all of them. You can do that on your own. But we've talked about how there was a baseline established in 2010 and then a target is set. Healthy People 2020 objectives target specific foods, and they also can target behaviors. So, for example, an objective is increase the proportion of schools that do not sell or offer calorically sweetened beverages. Physical activity is also addressed. You can see in the abbreviations here. Increase the proportion of school districts that require regularly scheduled elementary school recess. Reduce the proportion of children who are considered obese. Increase proportion of school districts requiring schools to make fruits or vegetables available whenever other food is offered or sold. So read through this and just have an idea of what the Healthy People 2020 objectives cover. Our next objective is to describe the expected pattern of growth of a healthy child during middle childhood and pre-adolescence. We talked in the previous lecture about how to define stages of the life cycle, noting that definitions will likely vary from source to source, and that's okay as long as you know what working definition you're using and is being used to define the population you're talking about. But in general, infants are birthed to 1 year of age, toddlers are 1 to 3 years of age, preschoolers are 3 to 5 years of age, middle schoolers are 5 to 10 years of age, and pre-adolescents are ages 9 to 11 years for girls and then 10 to 12 years for boys. This age difference in pre-adolescence is because girls tend to hit puberty sooner than boys. So that's what is marking the adolescence period there. But there is middle childhood and pre-adolescence are commonly referred to as school-age children, which refer to 5 to 12 years of age. So remember, at 5 years old, approximately, most children have entered kindergarten. Some less common to see a 4-year-old in kindergarten, but there are certainly 6-year-olds in kindergarten too. So 5 and 6-year-olds for kindergarten, but it varies. So we say about 5 to 12 years of age for middle childhood. So what are some growth considerations? We talked about too how growth velocity slows down during the school age years. We see more rapid growth spurts earlier in infancy and then in toddlerhood, and then we will see another big growth spurt again in adolescence at the adolescent growth spurt. So periodic monitoring of growth continues to be important, and weight and height should be plotted on the appropriate growth chart, which you have all now had experience doing. So great job. Some growth considerations are that the average annual growth during the school year is 7 pounds or 3 to 3.5 kilograms in weight and 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters in height. Growth spurts usually coincide with an increased appetite and intake. That makes sense because our bodies need substrates to build muscle and bone with. So parents, we talked about how they often become worried, and naturally so, with this rapid increase in appetite and then followed by periods where appetite's low, which can also be confused with picky eating, but that's okay. Parents shouldn't be concerned with this normal variability in appetite and intake. But periodic monitoring of growth does continue to be important. And for this age group, we also talked about how we should use the CDC growth charts. So here again are links to CDC growth charts. And remember, we also talked about the WHO growth charts, which are recommended for use in children under ages 2. So we can use the CDC growth charts in this age group now for children from ages 2 to 20. We can also calculate BMI percentile and interpret it. It has meaning in this age group, but there are many other measures that we can assess for various reasons. So a concept I want to talk about is called BMI rebound. During physiological development, we see gains in muscular strength, develop enhancements in motor coordination, and also improvement in stamina. Children can perform more complex pattern movements, and they can engage, therefore, in greater activities such as sports, dance, and other physical activities. During early childhood years, body fat reaches a minimum. This minimum is 16% in females and 13% in males. However, it then increases in preparation for the adolescent growth spurt, and this usually occurs around 6 years of age, and it's what we call the BMI rebound or adiposity rebound. It can be seen on the BMI for age growth charts, where we would see, as we are plotting our BMI percentiles, if you see this sudden increase in BMI, particularly around ages 6 or 7 or so, it could be the BMI rebound, where our body tends to store more fat, in part in preparation for the later years. So please be familiar with the term of BMI rebound or adiposity rebound. During middle childhood, boys have more lean body mass per centimeter of height than girls. These differences can become more pronounced during adolescence and uniquely impact each sex, and more on this to come during adolescence. We've talked about how BMI is not constant throughout childhood. Height is a component of the formula for BMI, and children's height increases as he or she grows. So it makes sense then that BMI is not constant throughout childhood. This is why we plot a BMI percentile for age. It's the only way to know if a child's BMI is outside normal. We use a reference population, and we compare a child then to other children of their own age and sex. It's important to note that the goal for children is not to have a certain range of BMI like adults. So for adults, it's cookie cutter, right? We have our ranges 18.5. Less than 18.5 is underweight, 18.5 to 24.9 is normal weight, 25 to 29.9 is overweight, and then greater than 30 is obese. And then there's, depending on what definition of obesity you're looking at, there's obesity can further be broken down into different classes of obesity. But for children, that's not necessarily the case. We can't say if a child has a BMI of 22, that's good for them. What does that really mean? We don't necessarily know how to interpret it because they are in this period of growth, whereas adults are not. So we use BMI percentiles. And here's an example of a growth chart, which again, you're familiar with now, but just another example of how you might see a child tracking. So here in earlier childhood, this is the age in years, you see pretty consistent between the 50th and 70th percentiles. Here's a little increase over here, and perhaps you investigate and see what's going on, and maybe that was the period of their adiposity rebound. But then here, let's see what's going on between around 10 years old, they spike up to the 75th percentile, and you say, okay, maybe it's an anomaly. Maybe they're hitting a growth spurt there. Maybe something happened. You can ask some lifestyle questions to see if there's any concerns. Again, those 70th percentiles, of course, still within the healthy range, but just to be sure to see if anything of note is going on. And then it looks like they're beginning, they go back to the 50th to 75th percentile. So this is just a good little visual for how a child's BMI percentile. It is expected to vary, so that's okay. That's normal, and you can ask questions. Questions is not a word. You can ask questions to go along with your observations and to get a full picture of what's going on. So next, explain what influences energy needs of school-age children. Energy needs vary by activity level and body size. School-age children need a variety of foods that provide enough energy, protein, carbohydrate, fat, vitamins, and minerals for optimal growth and development. There are DRIs for school-age children based on gender, height, age, weight, and physical activity level, and we have EERs, which we are going to go over. For ages 4 to 8 for males and females, the EERs are 1,742 calories per day for males and 1,642 calories per day for females. For ages 9 to 13, it's 2,279 calories per day for males and 2,071 calories per day for females. Be familiar with these numbers. They are important to know. The DRI for protein is 0.95 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. For 4 to 13-year-old girls and boys, it's the same. And in general, protein can reasonably be met by following the MyPlate recommendations and dietary guidelines for Americans. For vitamins and minerals, children's meet intakes of most nutrients meet or exceed the recommendations. Common shortfalls are iron and zinc, which are important for growth, and calcium, which we know is needed to achieve peak bone mass. So the DRIs for key nutrients for school-age children are here. Again, be familiar with these numbers. For ages 4 to 8 years old, iron is 10 milligrams per day, zinc is 5 milligrams per day, and calcium is 5 milligrams per day. For 9 to 13 years old, iron is 8 milligrams per day, zinc is 8 milligrams per day, and calcium is 1,300 milligrams per day. Iron deficiency is another common nutrition problem. We talked about it in toddler and preschool nutrition as well. It's less common in middle childhood than in infancy and early childhood, as well as adolescence. So if we were in class, I would ask you, why do you think that is? But I'm recording right now, so just think in your head, why do you think that is? And I think that giving the different stages, jumping to adolescence is probably a clue. And I have a feeling that you are right and that you noted it's because we are kind of in this period where growth is not necessarily constant, because you're still going to have little spurts here and there, but it's more stable. So we're not going to see this huge growth spurt like we do in our infancy, early childhood, and adolescence. And those growth spurts, we know, need a lot of nutrients for substrate, including iron. So they use up more iron in a more rapid period of time. So iron deficiency is less common during this time, which is a good thing. That doesn't mean we don't need to worry about it. Iron is still extremely important for brain function, for cognition, and for many, many other functions in our bodies. So eat iron-rich foods is still a key recommendation. I've given you resources on iron-rich foods in past lectures. It's also in your textbook, so please read more on that if you need a refresher. But just in brief, meat, fish, poultry, and fortified cereals are all good sources of iron, and we like to pair iron with vitamin C because vitamin C rich foods help absorption. Calcium, remember, competes with iron or competes. Hold on. Calcium can inhibit binding of iron, so it not necessarily compete, but it can reduce iron absorption. So we tend to say don't eat iron-rich foods with your calcium foods. Instead, eat iron-rich foods with your vitamin C, and then eat your calcium at a different time, if and when possible. And with that, we have ended part 1 of this lecture, and I'll start the second recording in part 2. So here's a brief self-assessment question. True or false? Treatment of overweight and obesity for children should focus on attaining an ideal body weight. I'll let you think about that and be familiar with the answer, because you might see that one on the test. All right, talk to you guys soon.